our post-modern civilization, we are facing just exactly the same problem, just exactly the same conflict between two schools of philosophy that they faced in the early days of America.
It's oftentimes in politics that those who dislike government will govern poorly. It feels partisan to say this, but truthfully, from the invasion of Iraq to the war on drugs and now, quote-unquote, Operation Warp Speed, and the response to the coronavirus pandemic and just in general, Republicans tend to fail at critical moments of governance. And their disdain for it is no secret either. However, the intentions behind the failures, the reason for a lack of success, that has changed dramatically with the Trump presidency, at least on the surface. It's the natural tendency for humans to remember our past through rose-colored glasses. It's called the nostalgia theory. And for many, this has quickly been happening for how we remember the Bush presidency when compared to the Trump era. And don't get me wrong, we'll dive deep into the deviation from normalcy that the Trump administration brought in, but first we must lay out the groundwork that was already present in the Republican Party from the Bush administration and others that has led to the great turmoil that we now face today in American politics. See, this video could go on for hours describing specific trends such as the wars on drugs and terror, but hopefully by now you've all been made well aware of all that through the thousands of hours of news coverage we've all sat through. Really though, the fall of the Republican Party to Trumpism has only one thing to blame: accountability. In 2009, during the dusk of the Bush administration, America was left in a dark place. The Iraq War was an international embarrassment with thousands of American soldiers and hundreds of thousands of Iraqis dying in its wake. The global markets were being hurt like never before, driven by not only a lack of proper oversight on Wall Street, but also a total lack of proper regulation and just good faith effort. And see, these failures unfortunately seem to stem directly from a commonality shared by many Republicans, and particularly by Trump and Bush. As written by Robert Draper in To Start a War, his book, Bush's decision-making was always influenced by his absolute hatred for the government itself. And as the Bush administration was dealing with the fallout caused by 9/11, they became convinced that not only was Iraq involved in 9/11, but that they also sought to form an alliance with Al-Qaeda. And above all, that they had concrete evidence of weapons of mass destruction being held by Iraq, all directly against the evidence and advice of their own intelligence agencies, peers, and allies. And to anyone who has now lived through the Trump administration, this pattern probably feels familiar. Many Americans are aware of what Bush did to the evidence, destroying it, leading into the war with Iraq, but rarely do we make a point to directly connect those actions to how Trump handled evidence both within his entire administration, as well as he lost and left the White House. Crying like a small child, I should add. And this is simply for a lack of accountability, both internally or within the government, and externally or outside the government. That includes domestic policymakers such as thinkers or authors, as well as our allies abroad, not holding us to our own ideals. As the saying goes, it takes a global village. And now, Trump's grand exit from the White House has created an inversion of this accountability. Now, instead of being accountable to their own constituency or the law, or even common sense, they are accountable to only one person: Donald Trump. See, the Republican Party, while continuously supporting fairly racist policies, has never been a party without direction or intent behind its actions. Nixon founded the EPA and wanted, though failed I should add, to make, quote, peace with honor with Vietnam. H.W. ran on Reaganomics, particularly dealing with low taxes, although his now famous, quote, read my lips, no new taxes, but was actually not accomplished. And W. Bush wanted to change the tone on foreign policy and usher in a new era of American isolation, although Dick Cheney ruined that very fast. The point is, like the case with most politicians, the Republicans always came to the table with something. Trump is legitimately different. Even when Trump ran in 2016, Nearly every single talking point included some form of race-based tribalism. This is very strange for a democracy. Then in 2020, instead of attaching himself to any policy, he instead solely focused on defrauding the public over a lost election and propping up conspiracy theorists all along, such as Marjorie Taylor Greene and QAnon. This loss of fundamental policy, paired with large pieces of the party staying fully loyal to Trump, makes for quite a breaking point. The Republicans are fractured into two camps, those choosing Trump over country, and the few choosing country over Trump. Worrying, huh? See, and this is where I draw issue admittedly with claiming that Trump hasn't dramatically changed the policy and tone of the Republican Party. He has. And admittedly, conspiracy theorists are no longer as funny now that they exist within the deliberations of Congress. And that is why this can all boil down to accountability. It's a different kind than you were expecting, but accountability all the same. It's accountability to conviction, to purpose. Simply put, the Republican Party has forgotten who they are, and they better fix it fast or else risk losing all that has been built. Because an ideological split in the party would kill its power, potentially giving Democrats a long stint for unparalleled power. I don't mind this, but I'm guessing Republicans will. So what do you think? What are the solutions now that Trump has been acquitted, and therefore technically allowed to run again? And for the future of us all, we better get educated and find solutions.